Welcome to the Saddleback Video Series. I'm Dr. Jenny French from the podcast, The Science of Reading for Grades 4 through 12. One of the greatest challenges that I've encountered as a secondary educator, and I'm guessing you have too, is trying to find age-appropriate, or I've heard, and I really like this term, age-respectful text. When we say struggling readers, we're typically referring to students who are only a few reading levels behind. Beginning or non-readers are students who are 3 or more levels behind. And when we have secondary students reading at a third grade level or even a first or second grade level, we need to remember that they are beginning or non-readers, and we cannot give them the same materials created for 6-year-olds. It's demeaning. The greatest barrier for education for a struggling adolescent learner is apathy or disengagement, and we cannot put a text that was written for a primary student in front of a teenager that drove to school. I've been a middle school language arts teacher, a reading coach, a curriculum director, and an assistant superintendent. But regardless of the roles that I've held, the challenge that I've been most passionate about is closing the reading gap at the secondary level. And the books from Saddleback directly support that work. Check out the video, The Science of Reading for Grades 4 through 12, Saddleback's video series, where we discuss the importance of fluency and reading aloud. Fluency practice is an integral part of increasing reading comprehension, and it's so often the missing piece in a reading intervention program. We have to build fluency, which means reading out loud. That's difficult to do in the secondary setting for a few reasons. Number one, we don't have books that students can actually read at their level or read independently, especially if they're a beginning or non-reader and they're not going to be age respectful or appropriate. Number two, we may not know who actually needs fluency practice. Number three, we may not know what fluency practice looks like in a classroom of teenagers, especially if they're in a mixed ability group. And number four, we don't know how to fit it in the schedule when we already have a jam-packed day. So let's address these issues one by one. Challenge number one. This is one of hundreds of Saddleback's high-low books, meaning they're high interest or low lexile. All the books at Saddleback are written at a 600 lexile or below, which translates to about a third grade level. And while they are written below a fourth grade level, the storyline is created for a middle school or high school student. And a student would not be embarrassed to be caught reading this because the covers are all eye-catching and age-appropriate. And it's something they would want to pick up. Decodable books written specifically for middle and high school students. And having access to these is game-changing for beginning readers. These are book bundles for tweens called Go Decode. These are geared specifically for middle school students. Phonics instruction should be taught in a systematic progression, starting with the simplest letter sound correspondence, beginning and ending consonants, and then moving up to a more complex skills like R-controlled words or diphthongs and syllabication, prefixes, suffixes, and then the continuum along that way. It's a progression. So what's great about these decodables is that they follow that progression. These books are boxed and organized by levels. So Go Decode is targeted for grades 4 through 8, or like I mentioned before, those middle school students. There are 3 different levels. This is level 1, you can see that. And this is the most basic phonologically. So it will have a word count of around 150 with a lexile of BR, which means beginning read. Box has a variety of genres like sci-fi, suspense, folktales, horror, sports, biographies. They're all there. So there really is something for everyone. And it gives students the opportunity to explore different types of text and to figure out what they really like, which is important because most non-readers have no idea what they like to read. So they need exposure to all types of stuff, fiction and nonfiction. And it's a teacher's guide too that breaks down the skills. And so as well as a reading log, students and teachers can track their reading. Also, every book has a comprehension quiz. You can also find the lexiles in their catalog. So every page of the catalog and website lists the titles their Lexiles, their high, low interest levels. And these catalogs are great. They kind of remind me of the Scholastic book orders where you would go through and circle everything that you like. I still do that with these. It's targeted. Decode is targeted for teens or high school students in grades 9 through 12. Again, there are 3 levels of difficulty, 1, 2, and 3. This is box level 1, so it's working on things like short vowel sounds, VCV, and plural words. This box is the higher level box. This is Discover. You'll find this has 3 levels too. These are levels 4, 5, and 6. This is a level 3. So just to give you a comparison of what the text looked like, you'll find a little bit more complex. So you'll still find things like silent letters, digraphs, the PH and GH spelling patterns. So it's still following that continuum or phonological progression, which is what we want. And then we have titles that are specifically for newcomers to help students assimilate to American school culture, like one on school expectations. And this one is called Finding Her Way, which is basically about just trying to survive and assimilate in the different experiences that happen in a school in the US. So these are still written at a 1st to 2nd grade level, but again, the audience is for middle and high school students. Saddleback has books for beginning or non-readers who are older. They can support students with special needs, English language learners, and newcomers, and even adult learners without literacy skills. Check out their full library online. We have the right materials. Let's make sure we have the right students. This is only possible with the right assessment. So we have to use an assessment that decouples decoding skills from language skills so that we can identify where the students has a deficit. So then we group the students for intervention according to the need, not the number of correct answers. If a student is lacking skills in decoding, but the teacher is only building language comprehension skills in class, the students won't grow. This is why so many times we see reading intervention classes not work. Also, we have to listen to students read out loud. Just by listening to students, we can determine their accuracy. Do they know sight words? Do they have word attack skills or phonics? Are they able to sound out words? We can determine also if they have good prosody or natural rhythm of reading. If they are robot reading or reading one word at a time, they are probably missing a lot of inferences, like the author's purpose or how a character felt during a scene. We can also check on a student's reading rate, how quickly or slowly they read. Is it laborious? Are they frequently losing their place? All of those things are impacting comprehension, but fluency practice improves them all. Most formative assessments will offer some type of lexile or data on the approximate grade level that a student needs. This is a good place to start, and it determines if their high, low, or decodable readers are a good fit, and it can also guide you with where to begin students or with which box to start. So now we have the right resources and we have the right students in front of us. How do we use decodables? What are the most effective strategies? In our Science of Reading video, we talk about the daily reading instruction that builds fluency practice and what it should include. It should include short practice drills of skills, repeated readings of text, partner reading, choral reading of easier material, and independent reading time. Short practice drills of skills can be rehearsing pronunciation and spelling patterns, similar to how you might implement a daily oral language or bell ringer. Poetry is a perfect platform for repeated readings, and multiple readings build confidence as a reader and deepen comprehension. Also, don't feel like once you've read a book, you can't read it again. Best practice is for multiple readings to occur, so feel free to revisit a text as many times as the students will desire it. So, adolescents crave positive social interaction. So setting up partner reading experiences with readers of similar abilities with a low lexile text is an engaging way to help students build fluency. These strategies will typically be used in a reading intervention class or group or even a language arts classroom with a subpopulation of students. So there's a good chance that you'll have proficient readers as well as students reading 3 or more years below grade level. Be intentional about partnering your readers and use these texts only with students who can benefit from them. Choral and echo reading are both great strategies to help students practice fluency. In echo reading, you read a sentence and then the students repeat that sentence in unison. This also gives them a chance to hear it first. There's no research showing evidence of cold reading, that it's beneficial, but there is tons of research to support repeated readings, increase student fluency and comprehension. So by echo reading, you're giving a chance for students to hear what the reading should sound like, and you're modeling the pronunciation of unfamiliar words to them. Choral reading is where you read together in unison. For choral reading, I would still encourage you to read the entire text to model it first, showing them the pronunciation of any unfamiliar words, and then rate and prosody of the text. So they're following all of those things to match you. And the students and you read the entire text in unison. You ask students to make sure they're keeping on pace with you and your rate. Again, we don't use this strategy for longer works of text, but these are great strategies to use in small group instruction, with Saddleback text or with short poetry, because Saddleback texts are typically less than 200 words. Another way to incorporate decodable readers in a secondary classroom is to offer them in the classroom library for self-selected reading. Allow students to explore on their own, and during independent reading time, they can actually read and not have to fake it. Another way to incorporate decodable readers is to use them for small group instruction. Round robin reading was proven to not be effective and actually have a negative impact on struggling readers. We call upon kids in class for cold reading. There's a level of anxiety and embarrassment that can come along with that. So small group instruction allows for a safe environment where you put students with similar reading abilities together, especially if you're working in a large classroom and there's a wide range of reading abilities. Remember, these decodable readers are not suitable for everyone. During that small group instruction, you can listen to students read aloud. If you hear students that reading is really choppy, or sometimes we call it robot reading, where it's one word at a time, scooping is a great strategy to use. This is where we practice with students to read in phrases and not in single words, which makes them sound like a robot. So have students put their finger on the first word in the sentence or phrase, and then they just physically scoop their finger across the page to the last word that they're reading, to the last word of that phrase or that sentence. And this helps students to make the physical and mental connection that we read in a phrase or a chunk and not in single words. Then as you facilitate instruction in small groups, you'll be able to see whether the text is still too difficult or it's too easy for them, and you can make adjustments based on that. It's just another reason why listening to students read is critical. How do we fit this in? One typical challenge for secondary students is finding time in class to use decodable readers. And I get it. There's not enough time in the day to teach all of your grade level standards, let alone help master all of the standards that they've missed coming up. I encourage you to list out everything you typically do in one class period, kind of like your outline or how you structure your class. Then take those practices and align them to research to see which practices have the most impact on student growth. On Hattie's work and visible learning can help you do this. If you're not familiar with Hattie's work, it's a meta-analysis or a study of all the studies of different educational practices. And there's clear research on what works. So as teachers, we don't have to guess. Scroll through Hattie's 250 plus practices to see if everything you're spending time on in class is making a difference in students' long-term retention and success. If it's not, replace those practices, which will make an impact of 3 or more years' growth. That research is available to everyone, and it should be driving our instruction. Practicing fluency for beginning readers should be one of our highest priority activities. It's worth the time on our investment. So take time and implement daily practice into your routine. In order to improve reading comprehension, beginning readers need daily practice reading out loud and independently. Saddleback's books make that possible, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. We have to prioritize fluency practice in our daily instruction, and do so in a way that is effective and based on research. For questions or to find out more about what reading fluency looks like in a secondary classroom, follow our podcast, The Science of Reading for Grades 4 through 12, or post questions on Saddleback social media. You can also find me, Dr. Jenny French, on LinkedIn.